Mabel Johnson spent her afternoon mending fences under the Texas sun, content with the rhythm of ranch life. To Carlos Vega and his convoy of cartel soldiers, she looked like nothing more than an old black widow on a lonely ranch, an easy mark for their takeover. They swaggered across her yard, rifles slung low, every step dripping with arrogance. Then came the shove, hard and mocking, as laughter rang out. But what Carlos couldn't see was the steel behind her eyes. 20 years of Special Forces service, missions buried in classified files, a lifetime of patience and precision. He thought she'd cower and beg. He was wrong. And with one hidden rifle, Mabel Johnson was about to remind them what happens when predators mistake a soldier for prey. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on Mabel Johnson's weathered brown skin as she carried 2 heavy buckets of feed across the dusty ranch yard. Her boots left firm impressions in the dry earth, each step as steady as the decades she'd spent on this land. The morning air was already thick with heat, but Mabel moved with the same purpose she always had, her tall frame straight despite her 68 years. "Grandma, let me help you with those," Nia called out, jogging over from the chicken coop. Her braids bounced with each step, and her young face showed genuine concern. Mabel gave a small shake of her head. "I've been carrying these buckets since before you were born, child. Don't need help now." Nia rolled her eyes but smiled, falling into step beside her grandmother. "You're just too stubborn to admit when you need a hand. Being tough isn't always the answer, you know." The older woman's eyes crinkled at the corners as she set the buckets down near the horse stalls. "Being tough is what kept this ranch in the family. Your grandfather understood that. God rest his soul." They worked together, moving through the familiar morning routine. Mabel measured out feed while Nia filled the water troughs. The horses nickered softly, their tails swishing at flies in the morning light. The ranch had been in the Johnson family for 3 generations, and every fence post, every barn board held a memory. "Tell me again about when you and Grandpa first bought this place," Nia said, leaning against the stall door. She'd heard the story countless times, but it never got old. Mabel ran her hand along her favorite mare's neck, feeling the warm strength beneath her palm. "It was 1975. Times were different then. Folks didn't take kindly to a black couple buying up prime ranch land." She paused, remembering. "But your grandfather, he had a way about him. Calm and steady, like these horses here. Said if they wouldn't sell to us straight up, we'd work twice as hard and save twice as much until they had no choice but to respect our money." Nia watched her grandmother's face soften with the memory. "And now, look at it. 300 acres, all Johnson land." "That's right." Mabel nodded, pride evident in her voice. "Every acre paid for with honest work and determination. Nobody can take that from us." They moved on to the chicken coop, where speckled hens pecked and scratched at the ground. The morning sun cast long shadows through the wire fence, and the air was filled with gentle clucking. Nia scattered feed, while Mabel collected eggs, placing them carefully in her gathering basket. "You know," Nia said, brushing dust from her jeans, "most of my friends' grandmothers are retired. They play bridge and go to book club meetings. But here you are, running a whole ranch by yourself." Mabel straightened up, one hand pressed against her lower back. "Nothing wrong with bridge and books. But this land, it's more than just work. It's our heritage, our freedom." She looked across the pastures, where the morning light painted the grass golden. "Besides, I'm too ornery to sit around playing cards all day." Nia laughed. "Too tough is more like it. I swear, Grandma, sometimes I think you could stare down a tornado and make it change direction." "Hush now," Mabel said, but her eyes twinkled. She reached out and touched Nia's cheek gently. "You've got that same strength in you, girl. You just don't know it yet." They walked together toward the house, the basket of eggs swinging gently between them. The old farmhouse stood proud against the morning sky, its white paint weathered but well-maintained. Purple morning glories climbed the porch trellis, and Mabel's rocking chair waited empty on the wide front porch. "Those college classes treating you right?" Mabel asked as they climbed the porch steps. "Your mama would be so proud, seeing you study agriculture, keeping the family tradition alive, but doing it your own way." Nia beamed at the mention of her studies. "It's amazing, Grandma. Learning about sustainable farming practices, new irrigation techniques. I can't wait to try some of them out here." "Just don't go changing too much too fast," Mabel warned, but her tone was warm. "This old place has its own rhythm." They set about washing the eggs in the kitchen sink, the familiar routine comfortable between them. The morning sun streamed through the window over the sink, catching the silver in Mabel's hair. On the wall behind them hung photos of the family through the years. Mabel and her late husband on their wedding day, Nia's mother as a child, Nia's college graduation. "You know what amazes me?" Nia said, carefully drying an egg. "How peaceful it is out here. Even with all the hard work, there's just something so right about this place." Mabel nodded slowly. "Peace is precious, child. Not everyone understands that. Your grandfather used to say that peace isn't just the absence of trouble. It's the presence of justice. When you work your own land, answer to nobody but yourself and the good Lord above, that's real peace." They finished with the eggs and stepped back outside into the growing heat of the day. The horses grazed contentedly in the pasture, and a red-tailed hawk circled lazily overhead. Mabel took a deep breath of the morning air, savoring the smell of sage and sun-warmed earth. The sound came then, distant at first, but growing louder. A deep rumble that didn't belong among the natural morning sounds of the ranch. Mabel's hand shaded her eyes as she looked toward the access road, where a cloud of dust was rising against the horizon. Black shapes emerged from the dust, SUVs moving fast and purposeful toward the ranch. The peaceful morning shattered as 3 black SUVs roared into the ranch yard, spewing dust and gravel. They screeched to a stop in a practiced formation, boxing in Mabel and Nia. Car doors flew open, and men with rifles poured out, their boots hitting the ground with heavy thuds. "Roden la casa!" a commanding voice shouted. The armed men spread out, their weapons trained on the 2 women. Nia pressed close to her grandmother, trembling. "Grandma, what's happening?" Before Mabel could answer, a tall man in an expensive white guayabera shirt emerged from the lead vehicle. Carlos Vega adjusted his sunglasses and smiled, revealing gold-capped teeth. He walked toward them with the casual confidence of someone used to taking what he wanted. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, his accent thick but clear. "Such a pleasure to meet the owner of this beautiful ranch." He spread his arms wide, taking in the property. "Though I'm afraid it won't be yours much longer." Mabel stepped forward, positioning herself between Nia and Carlos. Her voice remained steady. "This is private property. You need to leave." Carlos laughed, and his men joined in. "Private property? No, señora. Nothing is private when we want it." He pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his brow in the Texas heat. "You see, this land, it has become very valuable to certain interests. The smart thing would be for you to take a generous offer and retire somewhere nice. Florida, perhaps." "I'm not selling," Mabel said firmly. "This land belongs to my family." Carlos's smile vanished. He nodded to 2 of his men, who rushed forward and grabbed Mabel's arms. She didn't resist as they shoved her roughly toward the porch. Her body appeared frail, her movements those of a woman who knew she was outmatched. "Search the house," Carlos ordered. More men stormed inside, the sound of breaking glass and splintering wood following in their wake. Nia screamed as another man grabbed her. "Stop it! Leave us alone!" She struggled against his grip, tears streaming down her face. "Please," Mabel said, her voice quavering. "My granddaughter has nothing to do with this. Let her go." Carlos walked up to Mabel, standing close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "Listen carefully, Grandma. I'm trying to be civilized here, but if you resist—" He pulled out a silver lighter and flicked it open, the flame dancing in the morning light. "Well, accidents happen. Old houses burn so easily in this heat." Inside, the sounds of destruction continued. Family photos crashed to the floor, furniture overturned, drawers emptied onto the ground. One man emerged with Mabel's jewelry box, another with a stack of documents. "Nothing valuable," one reported in Spanish. "Just an old woman's trinkets." Carlos grabbed Mabel's chin, forcing her to look at him. "Where is the deed to this property?" "Make this easy on yourself." Mabel's shoulders slumped, her eyes downcast. In my study. The desk drawer." "Good girl." Carlos patted her cheek condescendingly. "See how simple cooperation can be?" More crashes came from inside the house. A man appeared in the doorway, waving a framed photo. "Hey, boss, look at this old lady. She was in the military or something." Carlos barely glanced at it. "Who cares? She's nobody now." He turned back to Mabel. "Just a weak old woman who should know better than to stand in our way." The men continued their ransacking, growing bolder with each moment of Mabel's apparent submission. They knocked over her rocking chair, laughing as it splintered. They shot holes in her water tanks, letting precious water pour into the dust. Nia sobbed harder. "Grandma, please, do something." "Shut her up," Carlos snapped. The man holding Nia clamped a hand over her mouth. Mabel stood silent, watching as decades of memories were destroyed around her. Her body language spoke of defeat, of acceptance. But those who looked closer might have noticed her eyes tracking each man's position, noting their weapons, measuring distances. One of the cartel soldiers, younger than the rest, grew increasingly aggressive. He strutted up to Mabel, rifle swinging casually in his hands. "What's wrong, Grandma? Too tired to fight back?" He laughed, shoving her backward. She stumbled, but kept her footing. "Please," she whispered. "This is all I have." The young soldier pressed closer, emboldened by her plea. He raised his rifle, pressing the barrel against her forehead. "Maybe we should just end this now, save ourselves the trouble." His finger rested on the trigger as he grinned, expecting to see fear in her eyes. But Mabel Johnson didn't flinch. She stared back at him, her gaze as cold and hard as steel on a winter morning. There was something in that look that made the young soldier's grin falter. Something that didn't match the frail old woman he thought he was terrorizing. The barrel of his rifle trembled slightly against her skin, but Mabel never blinked. She stood as straight and unmovable as the old oak tree in her front yard, roots running deeper than these men could possibly know. As they pushed deeper into the house, the young soldier grabbed Mabel's arm and shoved her toward the kitchen. "Show us where you keep your valuables, Grandma." His breath reeked of cigarettes and cheap tequila. The kitchen was a mess of scattered pots and broken dishes. Family photos lay shattered on the linoleum floor. 4 generations of Johnsons smiling up through cracked glass. Mabel stumbled, her feet crunching on the broken memories. "The pantry," she mumbled, pointing to a door in the corner. I keep important things in there." The soldier laughed. "What? Your cookie jar savings?" He kicked open the pantry door, shoving her inside. The small space smelled of flour and dried herbs, shelves lined with mason jars and preserved vegetables. Mabel fell against the back wall, her hands pressing against the wooden panels. To anyone watching, it looked like she was steadying herself. but her fingers found familiar grooves, pressing in a precise pattern. "Hurry up, old woman!" The soldier raised his rifle, impatient. With a soft click, a panel popped open behind her. In one fluid motion that belied her age, Mabel reached inside and pulled out a long black case. The soldier's eyes widened as he realized his mistake, but it was too late. Mabel's movements were a blur of practiced precision. The case flew open, her hands finding the grip of a military-grade sniper rifle. Before the soldier could raise his weapon, she slammed the stock into his jaw. He crumpled, rifle clattering to the floor. From the pantry doorway, Mabel had a clear view through the kitchen to the living room. Two cartel men were ransacking her china cabinet. The rifle settled against her shoulder like greeting an old friend. She drew a slow breath, just like she'd done 1,000 times before. The first shot cracked through the house like thunder. The bullet caught the taller man in the shoulder, spinning him into the wall. Before his partner could turn, Mabel's second shot took him in the leg. Both men went down screaming, very much alive but completely incapacitated. "Nos disparen!" Shouts erupted from outside. Boots pounded on wooden floors as more men rushed toward the gunfire. Mabel moved like smoke, sliding to cover behind the kitchen island. Her movements weren't those of a grandmother. They were the fluid, deadly grace of someone who had trained for decades in the art of combat. "Grandma!" Nia's voice trembled from the doorway. She stood frozen, staring at her grandmother with wide, disbelieving eyes. Who are you?" "Stay down, baby." Mabel's voice was different now, harder, focused. Gone was the quaver of an old woman. This was the voice of a soldier. "Get behind the refrigerator. Now!" Nia scrambled for cover just as Carlos's voice boomed from outside. "Kill them both! Burn it down!" More men poured into the house, but Mabel was ready. She picked her shots carefully. Shoulder, leg, arm. Each bullet found its mark with surgical precision, dropping cartel soldiers but leaving them breathing. The air filled with curses and screams of pain. "You should have done your homework," Mabel called out, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos. "Should have looked closer at those military photos." A bullet splintered the cabinet beside her head. Mabel didn't flinch. She pivoted, spotted the shooter in the hallway mirror's reflection, and put a round through his knee without even fully turning around. "Grandma," Nia whispered from her hiding spot, "where did you learn to—" "Later, baby." Mabel ejected her empty magazine, slapped in a fresh one. "Right now, I need you to stay quiet, and—" The distant wail of sirens cut through the gunfire. Red and blue lights began flashing through the windows, growing brighter by the second. "La policía!" one of the uninjured cartel men shouted. "Vámonos!" The sound of retreating boots filled the house. Car doors slammed outside, engines roaring to life. Mabel kept her rifle trained on the kitchen entrance, watching through the scope as black SUVs peeled out of her driveway. "This is Sheriff Dawson!" a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Everyone drop your weapons and come out with your hands up!" Mabel lowered her rifle slowly, but didn't put it down. She knew better. "Nia, stay where you are until I say it's clear." Heavy boots approached the front door. Sheriff Earl Dawson entered first, his deputies fanning out behind him. His eyes widened at the scene. 5 cartel soldiers on the ground, moaning and clutching various wounds, none of them fatal. "Jesus Christ, Mabel," Dawson whistled, holstering his weapon. "What happened here?" "They came to take my land." Mabel's voice was cold. "Made the mistake of thinking I was just a helpless old woman." Through the front window, she watched Carlos Vega's SUV stop at the end of her driveway. He stepped out, straightening his white shirt, now stained with dust. "This isn't over, old woman," his voice carried across the yard. "Nobody defies us." "Nobody! Get off my property," Mabel called back. Before I decide to aim somewhere more permanent than knees and shoulders. Carlos spat on the ground, then climbed back into his vehicle. The SUV roared away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Sheriff Dawson started directing his deputies to secure the scene and call ambulances. "We'll need statements from both of you," he said, pulling out his notebook. "This is going to be one hell of a report." Nia emerged from behind the refrigerator, still shaking. She looked at her grandmother with new eyes, not seeing the woman who baked her cookies and told her bedtime stories, but someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight all along. Sheriff Dawson stepped carefully through the kitchen, avoiding the broken glass and shell casings that littered the floor. His boots crunched against the debris as he made his way to where Mabel sat at her kitchen table, still holding the rifle across her lap. "Let me get you some water, Mabel." He pulled a clean glass from a cabinet that had somehow survived the chaos. "You've been through quite an ordeal." Mabel's eyes never left the sheriff as he filled the glass at the sink. Her finger rested near, but not on, the trigger. Old habits died hard. "I'm fine, Earl." She accepted the water but didn't drink. "Just need to clean up this mess they made of my house." Nia hadn't left her grandmother's side since the shooting stopped. She sat close, one hand clutching Mabel's worn cotton sleeve. Her other hand trembled slightly as she pushed her braids back from her face. "Grandma was amazing," Nia said, her voice still shaky, but filled with pride. "She moved like nothing I've ever seen before." Deputy Wilson poked his head through the doorway. "Ambulances are loading up the wounded now, Sheriff. None of the injuries are life-threatening. Precise shots. All of them." Dawson's eyebrows rose as he studied the rifle in Mabel's lap. "That's quite a piece of equipment you've got there, Mabel. Mind telling me where a ranch widow comes by military-grade hardware like that?" "Legally obtained and registered," Mabel replied flatly. "That's all you need to know." "Now, Mabel," Dawson leaned against the counter, trying to look casual. "With the cartel involved, I need to know everything I can to protect you properly." "I appreciate your concern, Sheriff." Mabel's tone made it clear she didn't. "But I can handle my own protection." More deputies moved through the house, photographing evidence and collecting shell casings. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows through the broken windows. "I'll post a car outside tonight," Dawson said, "just to be safe." "You do what you need to do." Mabel finally took a sip of water. "But we'll be fine." After the police finally left, Mabel and Nia worked together to board up the broken windows and sweep up the worst of the mess. Neither spoke much as they prepared a simple dinner of cornbread and leftover stew. They sat at the kitchen table, the rifle now stored away but within easy reach. Nia pushed her food around her plate, glancing at her grandmother every few seconds, until Mabel finally sighed. "Go ahead and ask, baby." "I know you want to." "Who are you?" Nia blurted out. "I mean, I know who you are. You're my grandma. But today, that wasn't my grandma who bakes cookies and tells me stories about Grandpa Jerome's old tractor." Mabel set down her spoon and folded her hands on the table. "I'm both, baby. The cookies and stories are just as real as what you saw today. But where did you learn to shoot like that? To move like that?" "U.S. Army." Mabel's voice grew distant, as if looking back through years. "Special Forces. Delta Force, specifically. I was a sniper." Nia's mouth fell open. But women weren't allowed in combat roles back then. Were they? Officially? No." A small smile tugged at Mabel's lips. "Unofficially. When they needed someone who could make impossible shots and stay invisible in places where a white man would stand out like a lighthouse, they found ways around the rules." "How long?" 20 years. Met your Grandpa Jerome when I finally came home. He was the only one who didn't treat me different when he found out what I'd done. Said he always knew I was special." Mabel's eyes grew wet. "He helped me build this ranch. gave me a place to be just me again. Nia reached across the table and squeezed her grandmother's hand. Is that why you never talk about your time before the ranch? Some things are better left in the past. Mabel squeezed back. But sometimes the past doesn't stay where you put it. Those men today, the cartel, they'll come back, won't they? Probably. Mabel's voice hardened. But they'll find out what others learned the hard way. This old woman's got teeth. I'm scared, Nia admitted, but also kind of proud. My grandmother is basically a superhero. Mabel laughed softly. No hero, baby. Just a soldier who learned how to survive. And now, I'm going to teach you the same. Outside in the growing darkness, Sheriff Dawson sat in his cruiser, parked just beyond the ranch's front gate. He watched the warm light spilling from Mabel's kitchen window as he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. It's me, he said quietly when the line connected. You were right about the old woman. She's ex-Delta Force, 20 years service, from what I could piece together. Probably Black Ops, given her age and the timing. He listened to the voice on the other end, nodding slowly. Yeah, she's definitely a problem. Took down 5 of your men without killing a single one. Could have killed them all if she'd wanted to. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Whatever you're paying me, it better be worth dealing with someone like her. The voice spoke again, making promises. All right. I'll keep you posted. But you better have a good plan. She's not someone you want to underestimate twice. The moon hung low and full over the Texas ranch, casting long shadows across the yard. In the dense tree line that bordered Mabel's property, 2 cartel scouts crouched in the darkness, their binoculars trained on the house. The ranch seemed peaceful now, but the broken windows covered with plywood told a different story. Lavez? One whispered to the other, adjusting his night vision scope. See, 2nd floor, east window. Through their scopes, they watched Mabel's silhouette move methodically from window to window. She appeared to be checking something at each one, though they couldn't make out what. A mile down the road, in an abandoned gas station's parking lot, Sheriff Dawson's cruiser pulled up beside a black SUV. Carlos Vega stepped out, his expensive boots crunching on the gravel. The sheriff killed his headlights, but left the engine running. You should have told me what we were dealing with, Dawson hissed as Carlos approached. 5 of your men in the hospital? This isn't what I signed up for. Carlos lit a cigarette, the ember glowing bright in the darkness. You signed up for whatever we tell you you signed up for, Sheriff. He blew smoke toward the cruiser's open window. Now tell me about this woman. She's ex-Delta Force, special ops sniper. Dawson wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool night air. The kind they send in when they need someone who can disappear and make impossible shots. Those wounds your men got? She placed them exactly where she wanted them. Could have killed them all if she'd wanted to. And why didn't she? Message, probably. Showing restraint. Warning shot. Dawson shook his head. Look, maybe we should find another route for... Carlos's hand shot through the window, grabbing Dawson's collar. This is the route. That ranch sits right where we need it. The old woman either sells or dies. Simple. Back at the ranch, Mabel moved silently through the darkened house. She'd turned off most lights, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. Years of training had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct screamed that they were being watched. In the kitchen, Nia sat at the table, watching her grandmother work. Mabel had spread out supplies, rope, fishing line, small bells, and other ordinary items that seemed harmless, but could become deadly in the right hands. Hand me that twine, baby, Mabel whispered, gesturing to a spool. Remember what I showed you about walking quiet? Nia rose from her chair, carefully rolling her weight from heel to toe, just as Mabel had demonstrated. She moved almost silently across the kitchen floor, bringing the twine to her grandmother. "Good girl." Mabel nodded approvingly. "Now watch how I rig this." Her weathered hands worked quickly, creating a simple but effective trap. "You put this across a doorway about ankle height. When they trip, this bell gives you warning. And this line here?" She pulled another cord. "That drops something heavy." "Like Home Alone," Nia whispered, managing a small smile despite her fear. Mabel chuckled softly. "Something like that. But our visitors won't find it so funny." She finished the trap and moved to the next window. "Now, about the doors. Remember the pattern we practiced?" Nia nodded. "Check the locks twice. Wooden bar in the brackets. Chair under the handle. Listen for scratching sounds." "That's right." Mabel paused, head tilted. In the distance, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Her eyes narrowed. "They're out there now, watching." "How can you tell?" "Watson's dog always barks 3 times at rabbits. Once means people." Mabel moved to the window, staying in the shadows. "Go upstairs, baby. Get some sleep. I'll wake you if anything happens." "I don't want to leave you alone." "I'm not alone." Mabel squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "I've got you watching my back, don't I? But you need rest. Tomorrow, we start your real training." In the tree line, the scouts watched Nia climb the stairs. One spoke quietly into a radio, reporting movement. They'd been cataloging every window, every door, every possible entry point for hours. At the gas station, Carlos listened to the radio report, while Dawson shifted nervously in his cruiser. "You're making a mistake," Dawson warned. "She's not some ordinary rancher you can intimidate. She's one old woman." Carlos cut him off. "Living alone with her granddaughter. No matter how well trained, she can't watch every angle forever. Can't stay awake forever." He flicked his cigarette away. "We have numbers. We have resources." "You're not listening," Dawson insisted. "I've seen her type before. They don't break. They don't run. They just keep killing until either they're dead or their enemies are." Carlos laughed, the sound ugly in the quiet night. "Then we'll send enough men that even a Delta Force sniper runs out of bullets." He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "By tomorrow night, I'll have 30 men here. Heavy weapons, body armor. She wants to play soldier? Fine. 30 men against one old woman?" Dawson's voice cracked slightly. "No." Carlos's smile widened. 30 men against one old woman and her precious granddaughter. Let's see how well she fights when she's protecting the girl." The scouts reported another movement in the house. Mabel's shadow passed another window, methodically checking her defenses. To anyone else, she might have looked like a worried old woman making her rounds. But Carlos had seen enough combat to recognize a soldier preparing for war. From his position in the shadows, he watched the ranch house through his own scope, a smirk playing across his face. "If she wants war," he whispered, "we'll give her war." Dawn broke over the Johnson ranch, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Mabel stood on her porch, a cup of coffee in one hand, surveying her land with eyes that missed nothing. The morning dew sparkled on the grass, where she'd spent hours setting traps during the night. "Nia," she called softly, "bring those garden shears and come with me." Her granddaughter emerged from the house, looking tired but alert. She'd changed from her usual summer dresses into sturdy jeans and boots, clothes for work, for survival. "First lesson," Mabel said, leading Nia toward the fence line. "We use what we have. See these rose bushes?" She pointed to the thorny plants that lined the property. "We're going to weave them through fishing line. Makes it invisible in the grass." They worked methodically, Mabel showing Nia how to strip the roses and create nearly invisible tripwires. Her granddaughter's hands shook at first, but grew steadier with each knot she tied. "Grandma," Nia whispered as they worked, "where did you learn all this?" Places better left unnamed, Mabel replied, checking the tension on a wire. But I'll tell you this, everything I learned was to protect what matters, just like now. They moved to the barn next. Mabel had already prepared sharpened stakes, dozens of them, their points darkened with soil to blend in. She showed Nia how to angle them in the tall grass, hidden but deadly. Remember, Mabel instructed, stay away from the north side of the barn. That's where the stakes are thickest. She pointed to 3 tall trees overlooking the property. Those are my nests. If shooting starts, you get to the cellar. Don't wait. Don't look back. Around mid-morning, they heard the first engine, a dirt bike coming fast through the back acres. Mabel's head snapped up, her body tensing like a hunting cat's. Inside, she ordered Nia. Watch from the 2nd floor, east window. Count how many come. Mabel moved like smoke across her land, rifle slung across her back. She climbed the nearest tree with a grace that belied her age, settling into a pre-prepared platform 20 feet up. Through her scope, she watched 2 cartel scouts on dirt bikes weaving through the trees. The first bike hit a tripwire at 30 miles per hour. The rider flew forward, straight into a bed of stakes. His scream was short. The second rider swerved, but the thorned wire caught his neck. He tumbled, clutching his throat, blood seeping between his fingers. Mabel watched, cold and still, as stone. When a third bike roared in from the west, she squeezed the trigger once. The shot cracked across the property, and the rider slumped, his bike crashing into a fence post. From her position upstairs, Nia watched in stunned silence. Her grandmother moved between trees like a ghost, checking each fallen man. None moved again. More engines growled in the distance. 2 black SUVs this time, creeping along the access road. Mabel relocated to her second nest, higher up, with better coverage of the approach. The first SUV's tires shredded on carefully placed caltrops. Metal spikes Mabel had scattered across the dirt road. The vehicle slewed sideways, trapping the second SUV behind it. 4 men poured out, weapons ready. Mabel's first shot took the leader's knee. Her second caught another in the shoulder as he tried to return fire. The remaining 2 scrambled for cover behind their vehicles. "We know who you are, Bruja," one shouted. "We'll burn you out." Mabel's response was another shot, this one punching through the SUV's window and into the man's throat. The last cartel soldier broke, running back toward the road. She let him go. Someone needed to carry the message. When the property fell quiet again, Mabel descended from her perch. She moved among the bodies with mechanical efficiency, collecting weapons and ammunition. One man still breathed, bleeding from her well-placed shot. "Please," he gasped in Spanish. "Mercy." "Mercy?" Mabel's voice was soft but carried across the morning air. "Like the mercy you showed when you threatened to burn my home?" She zip-tied his hands and feet. "You'll live. But first, you're going to help send a message." Nia came down from the house, her face pale but composed. She watched as her grandmother dragged the wounded man into the middle of the access road, a clear warning to anyone approaching. "You're on my land now," Mabel announced to the trees, knowing the cartel's spotters would be watching. She raised her voice, letting it ring with authority. "Every inch of it is rigged. Every shadow holds a bullet. Come back if you want, but understand what you're walking into." The wounded man whimpered as she positioned him carefully, making sure he was visible from all approaches. Mabel stepped back, surveying her work with the critical eye of a professional. "Nia," she called, "bring me that cardboard from the barn and a marker." Her granddaughter returned with the supplies. Mabel wrote a message in clear block letters, propping it against the wounded man. "Next time, I aim for the head." "What do we do now?" Nia asked, standing beside her grandmother as they walked back to the house. "Now," Mabel checked her rifle's action. "Now we wait. They'll send more. Probably tonight." But they'll be scared, and scared men make mistakes. She glanced at her granddaughter. How are you holding up? Nia took a deep breath, looking out over the land where bodies lay hidden in the grass. I'm okay. It's like you said. We protect what matters. Mabel nodded, pride mixing with sadness in her eyes. That we do, baby. That we do. The evening sun cast long shadows across the small Baptist church on Route 16. Inside, hushed voices filled the air as neighbors gathered, sharing whispered accounts of gunfire heard from the Johnson ranch. 3 vehicles burned out on her property, Mrs. Henderson said, clutching her worn Bible. Sheriff's deputies dragged them away this morning. Pastor Raymond Carter stood at his office window, watching his congregation cluster in worried groups. His weathered face creased with concern as he pulled on his jacket. He'd known Mabel Johnson for 20 years, watched her raise Nia, tend her ranch, never asking anyone for help. Meeting's over early today, he announced, grabbing a canvas bag from behind his desk. Got some pastoral visits to make. The drive to Mabel's ranch took 15 minutes, his old pickup raising dust on the back roads. He noticed fresh tire tracks everywhere, cartel lookouts, no doubt. At Mabel's gate, he stopped and honked twice, then 3 times, their old signal from when he used to visit her late husband. Mabel appeared on the porch, rifle ready but lowered when she recognized him. "Pastor?" she called out. "Come on up, but stay on the gravel path. Watch your step." Inside, the house smelled of coffee and gun oil. Nia sat at the kitchen table, cleaning a pistol with careful movements that looked newly learned. Pastor Raymond set his bag down heavily. "Brought you some things," he said, pulling out boxes of ammunition. "My brother works at the sporting goods store in Tyler. No questions asked." "Raymond," Mabel started, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish." He leaned forward, voice low. "Sheriff Dawson's been on the cartel payroll for at least 2 years. They've been pushing black farmers out all across the county. 3 families sold under market value last month alone." Mabel's face hardened. "How do you know this?" "Church sees everything," Raymond replied. "People confess, people talk. Dawson's deputies shake down migrant workers, steal their pay. Then the cartel moves in, offers protection. Been happening right under our noses." Nia set down the pistol she was cleaning. "We should call the FBI or something. There has to be—" "Baby," Mabel cut in gently. "Corruption goes deeper than you know. Might take months for the feds to build a case, if they even bother. By then—" She didn't finish the sentence. Pastor Raymond nodded. "She's right. But you're not alone, Mabel. Brother Jenkins left supplies in his barn for you. Food, medical stuff. Miss Rose's boys are watching the back roads, calling if they spot cartel vehicles." "The community shouldn't risk," Mabel began. "Risk what?" Raymond's voice took on his preaching tone. "First they came for the Wilsons' farm, then the Rodriguez's place. Now they're coming for you. If nobody stands up, who'll be left?" Nia stood suddenly, her chair scraping back. "Then let's stand up together. Grandma, we can get help, we can—" "No." Mabel's voice was firm. "I won't risk anyone else's life. This is my land, my fight. It's not just about the land." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Grandma. We can go stay with my roommate in Houston, just until—" "Until what?" Mabel stepped closer to her granddaughter. "Until they take everything we've built? Everything your grandfather died protecting? This isn't just dirt and fences, Nia. This is our dignity, our history. You run once, they'll make you run forever." Pastor Raymond watched the exchange silently. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Mabel's right, child. But she's wrong about one thing." He turned to Mabel. "This stopped being just your fight when they threatened every black farmer in 3 counties. We're not asking permission to help. We're telling you how it's going to be." A hint of a smile touched Mabel's lips. "Still giving sermons, I see." "Someone has to," he replied. "Sister Agnes is making calls up in Dallas. Got some lawyer friends looking into the land deeds, the sheriff's finances. Might take time, but—" A high-pitched whine cut through their conversation. Through the window, they spotted a small drone hovering about 50 yards out, its camera glinting in the sunlight. Mabel moved like lightning, snatching up her rifle. "Down!" she ordered, but she didn't take cover herself. Instead, she stepped onto the porch, raised her rifle in one fluid motion, and fired. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and plastic, its pieces raining down into the dirt. Pastor Raymond let out a low whistle. "Good shot," he said, standing up from his crouch. "They're watching," Mabel said grimly. "Testing our defenses, looking for weak spots." She turned to the pastor. "You should go. It's not safe to stay long." He nodded, picking up his empty bag. "I'll have Brother Jenkins park his truck behind the feed store. Supplies will be in the back, covered with hay. Changed out every 2 days." "Thank you," Mabel said softly. At the door, Pastor Raymond paused. "Your daddy was my best friend, Mabel. Fought in Vietnam, came home to fight for his land. Now his daughter's fighting the same battle." He shook his head. "Sometimes I wonder if the good Lord has a sense of humor." "If he does," Mabel replied, "I hope he's laughing at them, not us." They watched him drive away, staying carefully on the gravel path. The drone lay scattered across the yard, its pieces smoking slightly in the evening light. "Should I clean that up?" Nia asked. "No," Mabel answered. "Let them see it. Let them know what happens when they fly too close to my home." The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Mabel lay prone on the rocky ridge overlooking her property. Through her rifle scope, she watched dust clouds rising from the access road. 3 black SUVs and a larger transport truck approached, their engines growling in the distance. She adjusted her position slightly, stretching muscles that hadn't been used this way in decades. "Remember your training," she whispered to herself, controlling her breathing just as she had during countless missions overseas. The familiar weight of the rifle against her shoulder brought back memories of other ridges, other targets, other wars. From her vantage point, she could see everything. The convoy moved with casual arrogance, not bothering to check the high ground. Carlos sat in the lead vehicle, his arm hanging out the window, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. Mabel's finger rested lightly on the trigger guard as she counted heads through her scope. 12 men total, 4 vehicles. The math was simple. The execution would be anything but. Behind her, hidden in a shallow depression, Nia clutched her phone with trembling hands. She'd followed her grandmother despite strict orders to stay in the house. Now she watched, both terrified and fascinated, as Mabel transformed from the woman who baked cornbread and sang hymns into something else entirely. A predator, patient and lethal. Mabel's voice came out in a low murmur, reciting the sniper's mantra, "Breathe, focus, squeeze." The first shot shattered the engine block of the rear SUV. Before the echo died, she'd already shifted to her second target. The transport truck's front tire exploded, sending it into a violent swerve. Shouts of confusion filled the air as cartel soldiers spilled out of their vehicles, weapons raised but finding no target. "Come on, boys," Mabel whispered. "Bunch up nice and tight for me." They did exactly that, clustering behind the lead SUV. Carlos barked orders in Spanish, pointing in all the wrong directions. Mabel's third shot punched through the SUV's gas tank. Fuel spread across the dusty ground. One soldier spotted the growing puddle. "Get back!" he screamed in Spanish. "The gas!" Mabel's fourth shot sparked against the rock near the fuel. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough. The SUV lifted briefly on its suspension, flames engulfing its undercarriage. Men scattered, their training forgotten in blind panic. Nia's hands shook as she filmed, her phone capturing the systematic destruction. One by one, Mabel picked her targets. Not always killing shots. A knee here, a shoulder there. Each casualty required others to help them, further breaking their formation. "Sniper!" Carlos screamed, firing wildly at the ridge. "Up there! Up!" His words cut off as Mabel's shot took him in the thigh. He collapsed, howling in pain and rage. Within minutes, it was over. 3 men lay dead, 5 wounded. The others fled into the scrubland, leaving their vehicles burning. Mabel waited 10 full minutes, watching through her scope, before she finally spoke. "You can come out now, Nia. I knew you were there the whole time." Nia emerged from her hiding spot, sheepish but defiant. "I had to see, had to understand." Mabel's face softened slightly. "Put that phone away and help me check the wreckage. Stay behind me. Move exactly where I move. Could be survivors playing possum." They descended carefully. Heat from the burning vehicles washed over them as they approached. Carlos lay groaning, clutching his leg. His eyes widened at the sight of Mabel. "You're dead," he spat. "When the cartel finds out—" "Hush now," Mabel cut him off. "You've got about 15 minutes before you bleed out. Nearest hospital's 30 minutes away. Math ain't in your favor, son." She stepped past him toward the one SUV that wasn't burning. Its doors hung open, the interior scattered with papers from an open briefcase. Mabel pulled on latex gloves, another habit from her military days, and began sorting through the documents. "Nia, check those other men. Anyone still breathing, you sing out. Don't get close. Just look." Nia moved cautiously between the bodies while Mabel examined papers. Most were in Spanish, but numbers needed no translation. Bank statements, property deeds, transfer records. And there, paper-clipped to a deed for the Wilson family farm, was a photograph that made Mabel's breath catch. Sheriff Dawson stood grinning next to a cartel leader, both men holding shotguns on what looked like a hunting trip. The photo was recent. Dawson wore the same watch he'd had on yesterday. More damning were the handwritten notes on the back. Dates, dollar amounts, account numbers. "Found what you're looking for?" Carlos's voice was weaker now, his face pale from blood loss. "More than you know," Mabel replied, tucking the documents into her jacket. She knelt beside him, her voice cold. "Now, you've got a choice. That leg wound's bad, but survivable if you get help soon. There's a phone in your pocket. You can call your people. Try to explain how one old woman took out your entire crew. Maybe they'll help you. Maybe they'll decide you're not worth the trouble." She stood, shouldering her rifle. "Or you can call an ambulance. Tell them you were attacked by rivals. Keep my name out of your mouth. And maybe you live to retire somewhere quiet. Your choice." Carlos stared at her, hatred and fear warring in his eyes. Finally, he reached for his phone with trembling fingers. "Smart boy," Mabel said. "Nia, we're leaving." "Got what we came for." They climbed back toward the ridge as sirens began wailing in the distance. Behind them, smoke rose from the convoy's wreckage, a black column visible for miles. Mabel patted the documents in her jacket, feeling the weight of evidence that could bring down not just a corrupt sheriff, but an entire network of exploitation. "Grandma," Nia said quietly as they walked, "what you did back there, I've never seen anything like it." "Hope you never have to again," Mabel replied. "But if you do, remember, it's not about the violence, it's about precision, preparation, making every shot count." The sun was setting when Sheriff Dawson's cruiser pulled up to the ranch house, followed by 3 deputy vehicles. Mabel watched from the porch, her face carefully neutral as Dawson stepped out, adjusting his badge with practiced casualness. But something was off in his stride, a tension she recognized from years of combat experience. "Evening, Mabel," he called out, his smile not reaching his eyes. Heard there was quite a commotion out by the access road. Thought I'd check in, make sure everything's all right. Mabel rocked slowly in her chair, hands folded in her lap. Just some trespassers causing trouble. Nothing I couldn't handle. Mind if we take a look around? Dawson's deputies were already spreading out across the yard without waiting for permission. Standard procedure, you understand? Since when does the sheriff personally investigate every little disturbance? Mabel's voice carried just enough edge to make Dawson's smile falter. Inside the house, Nia watched through the window, her phone clutched tightly. She'd uploaded the convoy ambush video to a private cloud account, just like her grandmother had instructed. The evidence against Dawson was safely hidden in a hollow space beneath the porch steps. 2 deputies entered the house, boots tracking mud across Mabel's clean floor. "Need to search the premises, ma'am," one said, already pulling open kitchen cabinets. "You got a warrant?" Mabel called from the porch. "Don't need one," Dawson replied, climbing the steps. "Got probable cause after that firefight. You know how it is. Gotta investigate any discharge of firearms in the county." He stood over her chair, blocking her view of the sunset. His badge caught the dying light as he leaned down, dropping his voice. "Where are they, Mabel?" "Where's what?" "Don't play dumb with me." "The documents from Carlos's vehicle." "I know you took them." A crash from inside made them both turn. One of the deputies had accidentally knocked over Mabel's china cabinet. Generations of family heirlooms shattered across the floor, while Nia cried out in dismay. "Careful in there, boys," Dawson called, his tone mocking. "We wouldn't want to break anything valuable." Mabel's fingers tightened on her chair arms, but her voice remained steady. "You're not investigating anything, Earl. You're just throwing your weight around." "Maybe so." He grabbed the back of her chair, forcing her to look at him. "But I've got the badge, which means I make the rules. Now, where are those papers?" More crashes from inside. The deputies were systematically destroying her home, barely maintaining the pretense of a search. Nia's voice rose in protest, followed by the sound of a deputy roughly telling her to shut up. "Don't." Mabel's single word carried such cold authority that Dawson actually stepped back. "You touch my granddaughter, and badge or no badge, they'll never find all the pieces." Big talk from an old woman. But Dawson's hand had instinctively moved to his gun. He recognized the look in her eyes, the same look she'd given Carlos through her scope. A deputy emerged from the house, dragging Nia by her arm. "Sheriff, found this one trying to make a call. Got her phone right here." "Well now, let's see what the young lady's been up to." Dawson snatched the phone, scrolling through it while Nia struggled against the deputy's grip. Mabel rose slowly from her chair. Every deputy's hand went to their weapon. "Interesting videos you got here," Dawson said, his fake smile completely gone now. "Lots of angles that could make certain people look bad. Could make me look bad." He threw the phone against the porch rail, shattering it. "Too bad about the accident. Electronics are so fragile these days." "Let her go," Mabel said quietly. Dawson nodded to the deputy, who released Nia with a shove. She ran to her grandmother, trembling with rage and fear. "Search the whole property," Dawson ordered his men. "Every building, every vehicle. Tear it apart if you have to." He turned back to Mabel, all pretense abandoned. "I tried to play nice, Mabel. Tried to let you be the sweet old lady everyone thinks you are. But you had to stick your nose where it doesn't belong." "You're selling out your own people," Mabel replied. "Helping criminals steal land from honest folks. What happened to protecting and serving? I serve whoever pays best." Dawson's face twisted with contempt. "The cartel owns this county now. Fighting them is like fighting the tide. All you'll do is drown." The deputies continued their destruction, methodically searching every corner of the property. They broke windows, overturned furniture, scattered feed bins across the yard. Mabel and Nia could only watch as their home was violated by men wearing badges. After an hour of searching, Dawson finally called off his dogs. They hadn't found the documents, but the message had been sent. The deputies returned to their vehicles, some still smirking at the devastation they'd caused. Dawson lingered on the porch steps, staring hard at Mabel. "I know what you are now, sniper. Think you're still some kind of soldier, fighting the good fight?" He spat into her flower bed. "You're just a stubborn old woman who doesn't know when to quit. Whatever you think you have on me, it won't matter after tonight." He adjusted his gun belt, eyes cold. "You'll regret crossing me, sniper." With a final sneer, he turned and walked to his cruiser. "You won't survive the night." The vehicles pulled away, leaving Mabel and Nia standing amid the wreckage of their home. Broken glass crunched under their feet as the sound of sirens faded into the gathering darkness. Midnight turned the Texas sky into velvet darkness. Mabel sat in her kitchen, cleaning her rifle by lamplight, while Nia dozed fitfully on the couch. The destruction from the deputies' raid still surrounded them. Broken dishes, overturned furniture, shattered pictures. A flicker of movement caught Mabel's eye. Through the window, shadows darted between the trees. Her fingers tightened on the rifle. "Nia," she whispered, gently shaking her granddaughter. "Wake up! They're here!" Nia's eyes snapped open, instantly alert. They'd prepared for this, supplies packed, escape routes planned. But before they could move, the night exploded into chaos. The first Molotov cocktail crashed through the barn window. Flames erupted, spreading rapidly through the hay. Horses screamed in terror, kicking at their stalls. More bottles of fire rained down, turning the wooden structure into an inferno. "The animals!" Nia cried, starting toward the door. Mabel grabbed her arm. "It's a trap! They want us to run out there!" Gunfire peppered the house, glass shattering. They dropped to the floor as bullets punched through walls. Mabel crawled to a window, spotting muzzle flashes from the tree line. She counted at least 8 shooters. "Back door," she ordered. "Stay low." They made it to the kitchen when the front door burst open. Carlos Vega strode in, flanked by 2 cartel soldiers. Sheriff Dawson followed, his badge gleaming in the firelight from the burning barn. Mabel shoved Nia behind the counter and opened fire. One cartel soldier dropped, clutching his chest. The others scattered for cover. Carlos's return shot caught her in the shoulder, spinning her back. The barn's roof collapsed with a thunderous crash. Through the kitchen window, Mabel saw her horses, trapped and burning. Their screams mixed with the crackle of flames and gunfire. "You should have taken the hint, old woman," Carlos shouted. "Now watch everything you love burn!" Mabel's rifle clicked empty. She reached for a spare magazine, but movement from the hallway caught her attention. Too late. A deputy had circled around through the back door. The rifle butt caught her temple. Stars exploded across her vision as she hit the floor. Through blurred eyes, she saw Nia trying to run. Carlos grabbed her granddaughter, wrapping an arm around her throat. "No!" Mabel struggled to rise, blood running down her face. Another blow from the deputy sent her sprawling. "Grandma!" Nia fought like a wildcat, kicking and clawing. Carlos just laughed, dragging her toward the door. Mabel pulled her backup pistol, but Dawson's boot stomped on her wrist. Bones cracked. The gun skittered away across the bloody floor. "Told you you'd regret it," the sheriff sneered, grinding his heel down. "Should have stayed in your lane, sniper." The barn was fully engulfed now, casting hellish light through the broken windows. Smoke filled the house. Somewhere in the inferno, a trapped horse gave one final terrible scream. Carlos forced Nia into a waiting truck. She fought the whole way, calling for her grandmother until one of the soldiers hit her, silencing her cries. "You want her back?" Carlos called from the truck. "Come find us. I want to see how tough you really are, old woman." Dawson delivered a final kick to Mabel's ribs. "Clean this mess up," he ordered his deputies. "Make it look like an accident. Electrical fire, tragic loss of life." They doused the house with gasoline while Mabel fought to stay conscious. The world spun, pain pulsing through her head with each heartbeat. She heard engines starting, tires crunching on gravel. Just before they left, Carlos tossed a lit flare through the window. The gasoline ignited with a whoosh. Heat blasted through the house as flames raced up the walls. Mabel crawled through broken glass and blood, dragging herself toward the door. Smoke burned her lungs. Her shoulder throbbed where Carlos's bullet had struck. But none of that mattered. Only reaching Nia. She made it to the porch as the truck's taillights disappeared down the access road. Behind her, the house caught fully aflame, joining the barn in a massive funeral pyre. The heat pressed against her back like a physical weight. Every breath was agony, but Mabel forced herself up on trembling arms. Blood and ash mixed on her face, turning tears to black streaks. In the distance, her granddaughter was being taken further away with each passing second. "I'm coming for you," she whispered, her voice raw with smoke and fury. The words were lost beneath the roar of the flames consuming everything she'd built. The truck vanished into the darkness. Mabel collapsed in the dirt, consciousness fading as her home burned around her. The last thing she saw was the barn's charred skeleton finally giving way, sparks shooting upward like angry stars. Her animals were dead. Her home was destroyed. Her granddaughter was gone, but they had made a fatal mistake. They'd left her alive. As darkness took her, Mabel held on to that thought like a lifeline. They should have made sure she was dead. Because now, there would be no place they could hide. No force that could stop her from getting Nia back. The flames climbed higher into the midnight sky, a beacon of destruction visible for miles. But Mabel Johnson lay still in the ash-covered dirt, blood pooling beneath her unconscious form, while the night filled with the sound of burning timber and distant sirens. The first light of dawn painted the Texas sky in shades of blood. Smoke still curled from the ruins of Mabel's barn, thick and acrid. She lay where she'd fallen, covered in soot and dried blood, until consciousness slowly returned. Every breath sent daggers through her ribs. Her shoulder throbbed where Carlos's bullet had grazed her. The world tilted when she tried to sit up, her head spinning from the deputy's blow. But pain was an old friend from her military days. Pain meant you were still alive. "Focus," she whispered to herself, using the familiar drill sergeant tone that had carried her through worse. "Assess, act, survive." Mabel dragged herself to her feet, using a fence post for support. The barn was nothing but blackened timbers and ash. Her house stood as a gutted shell, still smoldering. The morning air carried the sickening smell of burned wood and flesh. She limped to the old oak tree behind what remained of the house. Beneath its roots, hidden years ago, lay a waterproof case of military-grade medical supplies. Her fingers, swollen from Dawson's boot, fumbled with the latches. Inside were field dressings, antibiotics, suture kits, everything she'd hoped to never need again. Mabel cleaned her head wound first, butterfly bandages pulling the gash closed. The mirror showed an ugly purple bruise spreading across her temple. Her wrist was broken, not just sprained. She fashioned a splint from medical tape and metal stays, gritting her teeth against the pain of setting it. The bullet wound in her shoulder needed stitches. She'd done this before, in darker places than this, sewing herself up while others depended on her. "Keep moving," she ordered herself. "Nia needs you." The satellite phone was hidden in a different cache, beneath the floorboards of what had been her bedroom. The fire hadn't reached this corner. She pried up the boards with her good hand, retrieving the encrypted device. It powered on, showing a signal. Mabel punched in a number she'd memorized decades ago, praying it still worked. 3 rings, then a gruff voice answered. Identity? Sierra 7 Delta, Mabel said, using her old call sign. Authorization, Romeo Tango 9. A pause. Johnson? Jesus, it's been years. Marcus, I need help. She explained the situation. The cartel, the corrupt sheriff, Nia's kidnapping. Marcus listened without interrupting. We can't come officially, he said finally. Too much red tape, too many questions. But I've got some friends who owe me. Give me 2 hours. Mabel ended the call, knowing what that meant. Her old unit would send what she needed through unofficial channels. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. The courier arrived precisely 2 hours later, driving a battered pickup truck. He didn't speak, just handed her a key to a storage unit in town. Mabel nodded her thanks, understanding the silence. Some things were better left unspoken. While waiting, she'd found her horses. 6 beautiful animals burned alive in their stalls. The chickens were ash. Even the barn cats hadn't escaped. She owed them better than leaving them in the ruins. The sun climbed higher as Mabel dug graves behind the oak tree. Each shovelful sent fresh pain through her injured wrist, but she wouldn't stop. These animals had been her companions, her responsibility. They deserved respect in death. She wrapped each horse in whatever clean blankets she could salvage. The smaller animals she placed in wooden boxes. Her good hand blistered on the shovel handle, but still she dug. Sweat and tears cut tracks through the ash on her face. Every strike of the shovel was a promise. Every pile of dirt was a bullet she'd put in Carlos Vega, in Sheriff Dawson, in anyone who stood between her and Nia. The sun was directly overhead when she placed the last animal in its grave. 6 mounds of fresh earth lined up like soldiers. Mabel stood before them, her grandmother's old hymnal in her hands. "The Lord is my shepherd," she read, voice rough from smoke and grief. "I shall not want." The words felt hollow in the scorched air, but she kept reading, giving her animals the dignity of a proper burial. When she finished, she placed a wooden marker on each grave. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have protected you better." The breeze carried ash across the graves like bitter snow. Mabel's fingers tightened on the hymnal until her knuckles went white. Rage rose in her chest, cold and familiar as an old weapon. She'd tried to leave violence behind, tried to be just a grandmother, just a rancher, but they'd forced her hand. They'd killed her animals, burned her home, taken her granddaughter. Now they'd face what she really was, a predator they'd been fool enough to wound instead of kill. "I'm coming for them all," she promised the graves. Every last one. The Texas sun beat down on her shoulders, hot as the flames that had taken everything. But Mabel Johnson stood straight-backed before her dead, a soldier again, a weapon being reforged in the fire of vengeance. The graves were silent witnesses to her vow. 6 fresh mounds of earth that would fuel her fury. She had contacts to call, weapons to gather, plans to make. But first, she owed her animals this moment of respect. Behind her, smoke still rose from the ruins of her life. Ahead lay blood and retribution. But here, now, Mabel stood guard over her dead, bidding farewell to the peace she'd tried to build. The storage unit's metal door groaned open, revealing stacks of olive-drab crates. Mabel's trained eye recognized military markings, serial numbers that shouldn't exist. Her old unit had come through. She lifted the first lid with her good hand, inhaling the familiar scent of gun oil and cosmoline. Inside lay a Barrett M82 sniper rifle, the same model she'd used in Afghanistan. Next to it, boxes of .50 caliber ammunition that could punch through engine blocks. "Hello, old friend," she murmured, running her fingers along the barrel. The next crate held modern body armor, lighter than what she'd worn decades ago. Night vision goggles, their lenses pristine. A combat medical kit, far better than her old supplies. Each item brought back muscle memories of missions, of nights spent in hidden positions, waiting for the perfect shot. The third crate made her pause. Blocks of C4 explosive, detonators, timers, enough to level a small building. A note was taped to the inside lid. "Don't waste it all in one place." Empor. Mabel allowed herself a grim smile. Marcus remembered her fondness for precision demolitions. She began sorting the gear methodically, muscle memory taking over. Magazine pouches on the left, medical supplies on the right. The ceramic plates slid into her vest with familiar weight. Each weapon she checked and cleaned, though they'd already been maintained to perfection. A truck's engine rumbled outside. Mabel had the Barrett halfway raised before recognizing Pastor Raymond's ancient Ford pickup. He climbed out slowly, hands visible, knowing better than to startle her. "Sister Mabel," he called softly. "I've got news." She lowered the rifle. "Come in, Raymond, and lock the door." The pastor's eyes widened at the arsenal spread before him, but he didn't comment. Instead, he pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. "Brother Thomas works security at the county building," he said. He overheard the sheriff on the phone. "They're holding Nia at a compound out in the desert, old ranch property the cartel uses for business." He spread the paper out, a hand-drawn map marking access roads, guard positions, buildings. "Thomas got this from checking property records. Says there's usually 20 men out there, more now that they're holding Nia." Mabel studied the map, already planning angles of attack, firing positions, escape routes. "They'll expect me to come at night." "That's not all," Raymond continued. "The whole community's ready to help. Sister Martha's boy works dispatch. He'll make sure any calls about gunfire get lost in the system. The Jenkins brothers will keep the deputies busy with a wild goose chase on the other side of the county." "It's dangerous," Mabel warned. "If they trace it back." "We're tired of being afraid," Raymond said firmly. "You're not the only one they've hurt. Besides," he smiled slightly, "the Lord helps those who help themselves." Mabel nodded, touched by their courage. "Thank you, Raymond. Tell everyone. Tell them I won't forget this." "Just bring that girl home," he replied. "And sister. Make them pay." After he left, Mabel returned to her preparations with renewed focus. She laid out her gear like she was dressing for church, everything in its proper place, everything cleaned and checked twice. The tactical clothing felt like a second skin, dark fabric blending with shadows. Ammunition pouches rode her hips, each magazine positioned for smooth reloads. The night vision monocle attached to her helmet, ready to turn darkness into day. She worked through the pain in her wrist, using the broken bone as fuel for her rage. Each twinge reminded her of Dawson's boot, of Carlos's sneering face, of Nia's screams as they dragged her away. The Barrett went into a long case, along with its specialized ammunition. For closer work, she chose a suppressed M4 carbine. Modern, reliable, deadly. The pistol on her thigh was loaded with hollow points. The knives were razor-sharp. Blocks of C4 went into a separate bag, along with detonators and timers. She hadn't lost her touch with explosives. She'd make the cartel learn that lesson the hard way. Small cameras with wireless transmitters would let her scout the compound remotely. IR strobes would mark friendly positions if any locals came to help. Everything had backups, redundancies, contingencies. The sun was setting when she finished her preparations. Through the storage unit's small window, she watched shadows lengthen across the desert, painting the world in shades of purple and gold. Mabel moved to a small mirror on the wall. One final ritual remaining. From a pocket, she removed a tin of black face paint. Not the fancy tactical stuff, but the old-school grease paint she'd used for decades. Her fingers traced familiar patterns beneath her eyes, dark stripes that would break up the shine of her skin in moonlight. The face in the mirror transformed. Not a grandmother, not a rancher, but a warrior from a darker time. She studied her reflection, gray hair tucked beneath the tactical helmet. Lines of age and worry marked her face, but her eyes were cold and sharp as rifle scopes, focused on the killing work ahead. The paint was still smooth and cool against her skin, just like it had been in jungles and mountains across the world. Now it would serve her one last time, here in the desert where she'd tried to find peace. They thought they were hunting an old woman. They were wrong. They were hunting a ghost, a shadow from the government's secret wars. And ghosts, Mabel knew, could be deadly things. She whispered to her reflection, voice soft as a bullet being chambered, "Time to finish this." The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Outside, the desert waited, silent and patient as a sniper's heart. The desert night wrapped around Mabel like an old friend. Through her night vision monocle, the world glowed in shades of green, every shadow crisp and clear. She lay prone on a rocky outcrop half a mile from the compound, studying guard patterns through the Barrett's scope. 2 men at the main gate, smoking. 3 on patrol along the perimeter fence. Another in the guard tower, more interested in his phone than his surroundings. Sloppy. Overconfident. She'd counted 17 vehicles, more muscle than usual. They were expecting her, but they were expecting a frontal assault. They didn't understand how Delta Force operated. You didn't survive decades of black ops by being predictable. Mabel checked her watch. 2:17 a.m., the graveyard shift, when guards were tired and attention wandered. She'd placed remote cameras earlier, their feeds glowing on a small tablet strapped to her chest. No movement inside the main building where they held Nia. She began her approach, moving like smoke between patches of scrub brush. The weight of her gear felt natural, balanced. The pain in her wrist had faded to background noise, dulled by focus and determination. The first kill was silent. A guard relieving himself behind a truck never heard her approach. The knife slid between his ribs, cutting off his breath before it could become a scream. She eased the body down, dragged it under the vehicle. "Jose, you fall in or something?" Another guard called out in Spanish. Mabel waited. Footsteps approached. The second guard rounded the truck, flashlight beam sweeping. Her knife took him in the throat. 2 down. She planted the first C4 charge under a fuel tank, setting the timer for 20 minutes. More charges went beneath vehicles, their detonators synchronized. The explosion would be her signal to move on the main building. The guard tower was next. Mabel assembled the Barrett with practiced hands, the suppressor adding lethal length. Through the scope, she watched the guard scrolling on his phone. The .50 caliber round punched through the tower's metal wall like paper, dropping him without a sound. 16 left. Time to sow chaos. She triggered a small explosive on the compound's eastern edge, just enough noise to draw attention. Guards rushed to investigate, bunching together. Perfect. The Barrett spoke twice more. 2 guards fell, their bodies spinning from the impact. The others scattered, shouting in panic. Gunfire erupted, wild shots hitting nothing but air. "It's her! The old woman!" Someone screamed in Spanish. "She's out there!" Mabel was already moving, the Barrett stored and her M4 carbine ready. She slipped through a gap in the fence, planted more charges. Guards ran past her position, chasing shadows. The radio chatter was frantic. "Where is she? Watch the perimeter! Call Vega!" She triggered the first explosion. A fuel tank erupted, sending flames into the night sky. Secondary explosions followed as ammunition in nearby trucks cooked off. Beautiful chaos. Through her night vision, She watched guards running for cover. The M4's suppressor coughed 3 times. 3 more bodies hit the dirt. They never saw her. "Bravo, team, check the north side," a voice ordered. Mabel smiled. They were still thinking like thugs, bunching up, making noise. She triggered another charge. The explosion sent 2 vehicles tumbling, crushed 3 men beneath them. 9 left. Time to move. She advanced through the smoke, the M4 leading. A guard burst from cover, firing wildly. 2 shots to the chest dropped him. His partner tried to run. 1 shot to the back of the head. 7. The main building's door was reinforced steel. She placed a breaching charge, stepped back. The explosion blew it inward, stunning the men inside. Mabel tossed a flashbang through the gap. The bang flash strobed through her night vision, but she was already moving. 2 guards in the hallway, still blinded. Double tap to each. Center mass. 5. Gunfire ripped through a wall beside her. Mabel rolled, came up firing. 2 more down. The M4's brass casings bounced off concrete, still smoking. 3 left. Carlos and 2 others. A scream echoed from deeper in the building. Nia's voice. Mabel's blood ran cold. She reloaded, movements automatic. Checked corners, cleared rooms. The layout matched the blueprints she'd memorized. Nia would be in the secure room at the back. Movement ahead. A guard, running scared. The M4 barked once. He fell face first, blood pooling beneath him. 2. More gunfire from the target room. A man's voice shouted, "Come any closer! She dies!" Carlos. And he had Nia. Mabel moved silent as death toward the sound. Through her night vision, she saw heat signatures through the wall. 2 figures, one standing, one kneeling. She heard Carlos talking, his voice shaking. "You hear me, old woman? I'll put a bullet in her head. Show yourself." The last guard was in the hallway ahead, covering the door. Amateur mistake. He never checked behind. Her knife sliced across his throat. He dropped, gurgling. 1 left. Mabel pressed against the wall beside the door, listening to Carlos's ragged breathing. She could picture him. Gun pressed to Nia's head, eyes wild with fear. He'd never faced someone like her. Someone trained to be a ghost, to kill without mercy or hesitation. "Grandma?" Nia's voice trembled. "Grandma, I'm sorry." "Shut up!" Carlos shouted. "You're dead, old woman. You hear me? Dead." Mabel's fingers tightened on her weapon. Almost time. She heard Carlos's boots scraping on concrete as he turned, heard Nia's quiet sobs. The last charge she'd planted outside detonated right on schedule. The explosion rocked the building, making Carlos curse in surprise. That moment of distraction was all she needed. Mabel burst through the door, M4 raised. The secure room was a concrete box, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that made her night vision useless. She ripped off the monocle, focusing on the scene before her. Carlos had Nia in a chokehold, pressing a pistol against her temple. Tears streaked Nia's face, but her eyes held determination, not fear. "That's my girl," Mabel thought. "Drop it!" Carlos screamed, his voice high with panic. "Drop the gun or she dies." Mabel's M4 remained steady, aimed at Carlos's head. Just the smallest sliver visible behind Nia. Not enough for a clean shot. Not yet. "You're surrounded," Carlos said, backing toward a corner. "Sheriff's already here with backup. It's over." As if on cue, boots echoed in the hallway. Sheriff Dawson stepped into view, revolver drawn, that same smug smile on his face that he'd worn at the ranch. 2 deputies flanked him, weapons ready. "Well, well," Dawson drawled. "The legendary Mabel Johnson, Delta Force's finest sniper, if I recall the files correctly. Quite a resume you've been hiding all these years." Mabel kept her M4 trained on Carlos. You did your homework, Earl. Shame you didn't learn enough to stay out of my way. Oh, I learned plenty. Dawson stepped closer, confident in his position. Learned how you ran Black Ops across 3 continents. How many kills was it? 30? 40? All those medals they gave you, then buried the records. He chuckled. Bet the good folks of the county would love to know they had a government assassin living next door. Like they'd love to know their sheriff's on cartel payroll? Mabel's voice was ice. Dawson's smile flickered. Careful now. You're outnumbered, outgunned. Time to surrender before this gets ugly. Already ugly, Earl? Mabel's eyes flicked to Nia. Her granddaughter gave the smallest nod. Check her phone, Mabel said. Carlos yanked Nia's cell phone from her pocket, tossed it to one of the deputies. The man's eyes widened as he looked at the screen. Boss, he said, she's been streaming. Live! Everything you just said. Dawson's face twisted with rage. Give me that! He grabbed the phone, saw the live viewer count climbing. Hundreds watching, recording. You stupid Dawson raised his revolver. Mabel was faster. The M4 barked once. Dawson's head snapped back, a red mist spraying the wall. His body crumpled, phone clattering beside him. The deputies stumbled back, faces pale. One dropped his shotgun. The other raised trembling hands. Don't shoot! Please! Get out, Mabel commanded. They ran. Now it was just Carlos, still using Nia as a shield. His eyes darted between Mabel and Dawson's body, realizing how quickly it had happened. 1 second of exposure, 1 shot, 1 death. You can't! Carlos's voice cracked. You can't get clean shot without hitting her. Try me. Mabel took a step forward. I've made harder shots than this. Stay back. The pistol shook against Nia's head. You know what your mistake was, Carlos? Mabel's tone was conversational, almost gentle. You thought because I'm old, I'm weak. Because I'm a woman, I'm soft. Another step. But I've killed better men than you, smarter men, faster men. I'll do it, Carlos screamed. I swear to God. You won't get the chance. Mabel lowered her M4 slightly. Because you made one last mistake. What's that? Mabel smiled. You forgot to check her hands. Carlos looked down just as Nia drove the knife, the one Mabel had slipped her during the hug at the ranch, into his thigh. He howled, grip loosening. Nia twisted away. The M4 roared. Carlos flew backward, chest exploding red. 2 more shots followed. Insurance. He lay still, eyes staring at nothing. Mabel rushed forward as Nia collapsed, sobbing. They held each other tight, neither speaking. The sound of crying echoed off concrete walls. After a long moment, Mabel pulled back, checking her granddaughter for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay, Nia whispered. You came for me. You really came. Always will, baby. Mabel kissed her forehead. Always will. A series of explosions thundered outside, the remaining charges detonating on schedule. The building shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The compound was being erased, evidence burning away in the desert night. Nia looked at the bodies, at the blood-spattered walls. What happens now? Now we go home. Mabel helped her up. Rebuild what they destroyed. Together. There'll be others, won't they? More men like them? Mabel checked her weapon, gestured toward the door. Let them come. They'll learn what those 2 learned. She glanced at Dawson's corpse. Nobody takes what's ours. Nobody. Another explosion rocked the building. Fire alarms began to wail. Through the windows, orange light painted the walls as vehicles burned. Mabel led Nia toward the exit, stepping past shell casings and broken glass. Stay close, she said. We're not done yet. They moved through smoke-filled hallways, past the bodies Mabel had left in her wake. Nia didn't look away, didn't flinch. She'd seen what it took to survive, what it meant to fight back. The night air hit them like a furnace blast as they emerged. The compound was transformed into an inferno, flames reaching for the stars. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real law enforcement, finally responding. They had a long walk ahead, back to where Mabel had hidden their escape vehicle. But first, they paused to watch the fire consume the place where justice had been served. Not the justice of laws and badges, but the harder justice of survival, of refusing to be erased. Dawn crept over the desert horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. The compound lay in ruins, twisted metal and charred concrete still smoking in the cool morning air. Federal vehicles swarmed the area, their lights flashing against the debris. FBI agent Sarah Chen stood among the wreckage, shaking her head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this," she said, stepping over shell casings. One person did all this. Mabel sat in the back of an ambulance, letting a medic check her wounds while Nia held her hand. They watched as agents cataloged evidence, took photos, and bagged the bodies of Carlos and Sheriff Dawson. "Ma'am," Agent Chen approached, notepad in hand. "I need to understand what happened here." Nia squeezed her grandmother's hand and spoke up. "I can show you." She pulled out her phone, brought up the live stream recording. "Everything's here. The sheriff confessing to working with the cartel, the kidnapping, all of it." Chen watched the footage, her eyebrows rising. Another agent hurried over, carrying evidence bags. "Agent Chen, you need to see this. We found ledgers, bank statements, dozens of photos linking Dawson to the cartel. Goes back years." "And these were just lying around?" Chen asked skeptically. "No," Mabel said, her voice tired but firm. "I gathered them during my reconnaissance. Left them where you'd find them." She managed a small smile. Old habits die hard. More vehicles approached, pickup trucks and cars filled with familiar faces. Pastor Raymond led the group, followed by neighbors from surrounding farms and ranches. They parked outside the police line, gathering to show support. "Mrs. Johnson," Pastor Raymond called out. "We came as soon as we heard. The whole community's here for you." Mabel stood slowly, waving to acknowledge them. The medic tried to make her sit back down, but she brushed him off. These were her people. She wouldn't greet them sitting down. "Your ranch," Raymond said, approaching with several others. "We've already got crews headed there. Going to clear the burned barn, start rebuilding." Marcus brought his construction team. Sarah's got feed for any surviving livestock. Tears welled in Nia's eyes. "You'd do that for us?" "Child," an elderly woman stepped forward. "Your grandmother stood up to evil men who've been terrorizing this county for years. Stood up when no one else would. Least we can do is help put things right." Agent Chen cleared her throat. "Mrs. Johnson, we still need your official statement." "You have my statement right there," Mabel pointed to Nia's phone, "and all the evidence you need to clean up what's left of their operation. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go home." "Ma'am, there are protocols." "I've dealt with enough protocols in my life," Mabel cut her off. "You want to talk more? You know where to find me." The drive back to the ranch was quiet, Nia at the wheel while Mabel rested. As they crested the final hill, they could already see trucks and people moving across their property. Some cleared debris, others measured lumber for repairs. Women had set up tables with food and drinks for the workers. "Look at that," Nia whispered. They really came. Mabel watched her community work, remembered all the times she'd kept to herself, thought she needed to handle everything alone. Now, here they were, dozens of neighbors, rebuilding what the cartel had tried to destroy. They parked near the house. Despite her exhaustion, Mabel walked the property, inspecting damage, making mental notes of what needed fixing first. People nodded respectfully as she passed, some reaching out to touch her shoulder or give quiet thanks. Word had spread fast. The elderly black rancher who'd taken down a cartel. The grandmother who'd rescued her granddaughter from criminals and corrupt cops. With each telling, the story grew, but the truth was enough. Mabel had fought for what was hers, and won. "Mrs. Johnson," a young man approached, cap in hand. "My daddy says you served with him. Delta Force, 85 to 89. Says you saved his life in—" "Panama," Mabel finished. "Thomas's boy?" The young man nodded. "Your father was a good man. Brave man. He said you were the best shot he ever saw." Mabel patted his shoulder. "Still am, son. Still am." As the morning wore on, more people arrived. Some brought food, others building materials or offers of help. Nia organized them into teams, directing efforts with a newfound confidence. She'd changed during their ordeal, grown stronger, like steel tempered in fire. Pastor Raymond found Mabel sitting on her porch, watching the activity. "Quite a sight," he said, settling into a chair beside her. "Never expected this," she admitted. "Evil thrives when good people stay quiet," Raymond said. "You refused to be quiet. Showed us all what courage looks like." "Wasn't courage," Mabel shook her head. "Was necessity. They thought they could take what's mine. Thought an old black woman would just give up her land, her dignity. And they learned different," Raymond smiled. "They surely learned different." A truck pulled up carrying lumber for the new barn. Nia directed them where to unload, her voice clear and confident across the yard. Mabel felt pride swell in her chest. Her granddaughter had inherited more than just land. She'd inherited the strength to defend it. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning cool. Workers paused for water and rest, gathering in patches of shade to share stories about the night's events. With each telling, Mabel's legend grew, but she paid it no mind. She knew the truth was enough. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.